My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 31 years old. And the strange things about being called strong is that most people don't realize how much of that strength was built on quietly carrying things no one else wanted to hold. I'm telling you this because too many people in this story hid behind silence. And I'm done doing that. I was 31. I had a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood I had watched slowly improve every year I lived there. Not by accident. I paid attention. I invested. I stayed when other people left. I had a career in logistics management that I built from the ground up, warehouse floor to regional coordinator. Long hours, early mornings, late nights. But it was mine. I had savings, a retirement account, stability. And in my family, I had a role. I was the responsible one, the one who sent money when things got tight, the one who showed up early and left late, the one who fixed problems before anyone even had to ask. I didn't keep score because I wasn't raised to. I was raised to believe that love looked like showing up without conditions. And for 31 years, I did exactly that. My older sister, Danielle Bennett, was 34, 3 years older. That matters more than it should. Because when you're younger, you grow up thinking the older one is supposed to know better. Danielle didn't. She was magnetic. That's the word people used. She could walk into a room and make people feel like she belonged there, even when she didn't. She drifted between jobs, between relationships, between apartments. And every time she fell, someone in the family caught her. Most of the time, that someone was me. The winter before everything happened, I let Danielle stay with me. 6 weeks. She said it was temporary, complicated, just until she figured things out. I didn't ask too many questions. I gave her a key. I stocked the fridge. I told her to stay as long as she needed. That's who I was, or at least, who I thought I was supposed to be. I went to work every day, came home to a sister watching TV, eating my food, laughing like things were fine. And my boyfriend Marcus Hale was there too. 4 years together, engaged for 14 months. We had routines, shared plans, a future that felt stable. That word matters. Stable. It's what I believed I had. I didn't know anything was wrong. Not in the winter. Not in January. Not in February. Not even in March. I found out in April, on a Saturday night. My work trip got canceled. Last minute. I didn't tell anyone. I just drove home early, thinking maybe I'd surprise Marcus. Maybe we'd order takeout, watch something stupid, fall asleep on the couch. Something normal, something safe. I walked into the house. It was quiet, too quiet. And I remember this clearly, not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. The kind of silence that doesn't warn you, just waits. I walked upstairs. The bedroom door was slightly open, just enough. And something in me, something small, instinctive, paused. Then I pushed the door, and everything I thought I knew about my life ended. They were there, Marcus and Danielle, in my bed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even move at first. I just stood there and watched. I watched Marcus turn his head. I watched Danielle freeze. I watched her face go through something fast. Shock, fear, calculation. Not guilt. Not really. Something else. Something colder. Marcus sat up slowly. Too slowly. Like he thought if he controlled the pace, he could control what was happening. And then he looked at me and said the sentence that changed everything. Olivia, it's not what it looks like. And I remember thinking, not feeling, thinking, that people only say that when it is exactly what it looks like. I turned around, walked downstairs, sat at my kitchen table, and sent 2 messages. One to my best friend Troy. I need you, come over. The other to my mother. You need to know Danielle just slept with Marcus. I'm handling it. Then I put my phone down, face down, and waited. I could hear them upstairs. Movement, whispering, panic trying to organize itself into a story. I already knew I didn't want to hear it. Marcus came downstairs first. Of course he did. He always liked to think he could explain his way out of things. He sat across from me, in my house, at my table, and told me it had only happened twice. Twice. Like that was supposed to mean something. Like that was supposed to make it smaller, cleaner, forgivable. He said he felt disconnected from me, that I worked too much, that Danielle had been there, that she listened, that it just happened. It just happened. People say that when they've rehearsed, when they expect forgiveness, when they think the person sitting across from them still sees them the same way. I let him finish. I didn't interrupt, didn't react. And when he was done, I told him to leave. Take whatever he could carry that night. We would arrange the rest later. He asked if we could talk. I said, we're done talking. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. That was fine. I didn't recognize him either. He left. Danielle came downstairs 20 minutes later. She didn't sit right away. She hovered, like she was waiting for me to break first. I didn't. She finally sat down where he had been. And for a second, Just a second. I saw something almost real in her expression, something close to shame. Then it disappeared, replaced by something familiar. That same charm, that same instinct to survive by softening the truth. Olivia, I'm sorry, it just got out of hand. I looked at her, my sister, the person I had fed, housed, protected, defended, over and over again. And I realized something in that moment. Not emotionally, clearly, precisely. There are things you can come back from, and there are things you don't. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't ask questions. I just said one sentence. We're done. Then I stood up and pointed at the door. She tried to speak. I pointed again, and she left. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the same silence. This one had weight. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not shaking, just thinking. And at 9 a.m. the next morning, I called my mother, not to cry, not to vent, to inform. Because I still believed, at that point, that truth mattered, that family would understand, that someone would stand with me. I told her everything, clearly, factually, without exaggeration. And when I finished, she was quiet, for a long time. Then she said something that rearranged everything I thought I knew about where I stood in my own family. Olivia, Danielle has always struggled with impulse control. You know that. You need to find it in your heart to forgive her. She's your sister. And just like that, I understood. This wasn't just about what happened in my bedroom. It was about what was about to happen next. And somehow, I knew it was going to hurt more. There's a specific kind of silence that follows betrayal. Not the loud kind. Not the kind filled with shouting or slammed doors. The quiet kind. The kind where you're waiting for someone to say the one thing that would make it feel like you're not alone in it. I didn't get that. Not from my mother. Not from anyone. After that call, I sat in my kitchen for a long time. The same kitchen where, less than 12 hours earlier, I had watched my life divide cleanly into before and after. I replayed her words in my head. Impulse control. Forgive her. She's your sister. Not once. Not a single time. Did she say, I'm sorry she did this to you? There's a difference between I'm sorry this happened and I'm sorry for what was done to you. One acknowledges discomfort. The other acknowledges harm. I noticed the difference immediately, and I never forgot it. But I didn't stop there. Because part of me, some stubborn, hopeful part, still believed this was just a misstep, that if I explained it clearly enough, someone would understand. So I made more calls. The first was my aunt, my father's sister. She had been at every birthday, every graduation, every major moment of my life. She had always told me she saw me, that I was different, stronger. I told her what happened. Every detail. I kept my voice steady, controlled. When I finished, she sighed, a long, tired sound, and said, That's terrible, Olivia. It really is. But Danielle's been struggling. You know how she gets when she feels unstable. Family has to come together during times like this. Come together. I remember staring at the wall in front of me, trying to understand how those words could possibly apply to what I had just said. I called my cousin next, the one who had been in my wedding lineup, the one who used to joke about how solid Marcus and I were. He didn't even let me finish. I don't want to get in the middle of this. The middle, like this was a disagreement, like this was something with two equal sides. By the fourth call, I started to notice a pattern. By the seventh, it wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a structure. By the end of the week, I had spoken to 11 people in my family. 11. 3 of them said what happened to me was wrong, clearly, without conditions. 8 of them adjusted the story, softened it, redirected it. Some blamed Marcus more than Danielle. Some blamed Danielle, but quickly followed it with, you know how she is. Some, and this one stayed with me, suggested that maybe I had been too focused on work, that maybe I had created distance, that maybe this didn't just happen. And one of them, my uncle, didn't even try to soften it. He said, You shouldn't have let another woman stay in your house with your man. That's just asking for trouble. I didn't respond, because I didn't trust myself too, but I remember exactly what I thought. Not that he was wrong, but that, somewhere, deep in the logic of my family, what had been taken from me was being treated like something I had failed to protect, like I had left something valuable unattended, and should have expected it to disappear. That was the moment something in me shifted. Not cracked, not broke, shifted, because I stopped listening to what they were saying and started hearing what they meant. What they meant was, Danielle's comfort in the family mattered more than my pain. What they meant was, my role, the responsible one, the stable one, the one who holds everything together, was so ingrained that even when I was the one who had been hurt, I was still expected to carry the weight. I had spent 31 years being the one people leaned on, the emergency contact, the problem solver, the quiet provider. I had paid for holidays, covered shortfalls, showed up every time someone needed something, without ever making them feel small for asking. And I had believed, without ever really questioning it, that this was a relationship, that what I was building with them was mutual, that when the day came, when I needed to be held up, the structure I had spent my entire life reinforcing would hold me too. That week taught me something very simple. The structure wasn't mutual. It was mine. I built it. I maintained it. I carried it. And when I needed it most, every single person inside it either handed me a shovel or stepped back and let it collapse. That realization didn't come with tears. Not right away. It came with clarity. Cold. Precise. Uncomfortable. I stopped calling. I stopped texting. I stopped showing up. No announcement. No explanation. No final speech. I just stopped. I canceled the automatic transfer I had set up for my mother's utilities. I left the family group chat. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't send a message. And I want to be very clear about something. That silence wasn't anger. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't me trying to make them feel something. It was honesty. Because continuing to show up after everything I had just seen clearly would have been a lie. And I was done lying to myself. 3 weeks passed. Troy came over one night. We sat on the back porch. It was late, the kind of quiet that feels heavier than usual. I had 2 drinks, not more, just enough to loosen the edges of something I had been holding too tightly. And then I cried for about 20 minutes. No build-up, no warning, just release. Troy didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it, didn't offer advice. He just sat there. And when I was done, I wiped my face, finished my drink, and we talked about basketball like nothing had happened. And in a strange way, that helped more than anything anyone had said that week. I didn't cry again after that. Not because I was over it, not because it didn't matter, but because something had settled. A decision. The family didn't reach out that first month. I think they expected me to come back, like I always had, because that was the pattern. Olivia gets upset. Olivia processes it quietly. Olivia shows up again, because Olivia is the responsible one, and responsible people don't let things fall apart. What they didn't understand was that I had spent those 3 weeks realizing something. The pattern was the problem. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to continue it. So instead of going back, I went forward. And the first thing I did was let go of everything that still tied me to the version of my life that no longer existed. Starting with the house, because every room in it held a memory I didn't want anymore. The bedroom, the kitchen table, the front door. They weren't just spaces anymore. They were reminders. And I wasn't interested in living inside reminders. So I sold it fast, clean, no hesitation. Within 40 days, it was gone. And I walked away with something I hadn't had in a long time. Not closure, but control. I sold the house in 40 days. People hear that and assume it must have been emotional. That I stood in the empty living room and cried. That I touched the walls. That I grieved the life I thought I was supposed to have there. I didn't. By then, grief had already changed shape. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was functional. Deliberate. I packed what was mine. I discarded what wasn't worth carrying. I signed papers. I transferred accounts. I forwarded mail to a P.O. box first, then to a new address nobody in my family knew. I did not disappear dramatically. I just moved my life so cleanly that by the time anyone thought to look closely, there was nothing left for them to access. I rented an apartment across the city for a short stretch. Then, a few months later, I moved again. A new city, new phone number, new email, new routines. The kind of reset that doesn't look cinematic from the outside. Just boxes, utility setup, a mattress on a floor for a week, coffee in unfamiliar kitchens. But sometimes rebuilding starts in places that plain. Sometimes the most important thing in the world is a quiet room where no one can reach you. That was what I needed. Not comfort, safety. And once I had it, I did something I should have done years earlier. I went to therapy. I say that plainly because people still act like healing only counts if it happens privately, especially for women like me. Competent women, reliable women. The ones who hold things together so well that people mistake our functionality for invincibility. I sat across from a therapist named Dr. Ellison for the better part of a year. At first, I talked about Marcus and Danielle, the bedroom, the kitchen table, the 11 phone calls, the exact words my mother used. But eventually, therapy became about something larger. The architecture underneath all of it. The role I had been playing for so long that I thought it was my personality. The dependable daughter, the stable sister, the woman who absorbed impact and kept moving. Dr. Ellison said something to me in one of those early sessions that I wrote down and kept. She said, being needed is not the same as being loved. I remember sitting there, blinking at her, because I had built entire relationships on the assumption that those two things overlapped. In my family, they had looked identical. Need had always arrived dressed like affection. Depend on Olivia. Call Olivia. Ask Olivia. Lean on Olivia. And because I was good at carrying things, everybody around me started treating my capacity like it was endless. What therapy gave me was not softness. It gave me precision. It taught me to separate obligation from love, access from intimacy, being useful from being valued. And once I understood that, I couldn't unknow it. That changed everything. Troy stayed in my corner the whole time. He checked on me without hovering, sent me job listings without turning them into speeches, let me be angry without trying to rush me into forgiveness. A few months into my new city, he called and told me a mid-sized company in a growth phase was looking for someone with my background. Director level, 2 full steps above where I'd been. He said, "I already mentioned your name. Don't make me regret that." It made me laugh for the first time in a while. Then I updated my resume and got to work. 3 rounds of interviews across 2 months. Operations strategy, team management, supply chain forecasting, crisis logistics. The strange thing about being underestimated emotionally is that it can make you terrifying professionally. I was good at my job. I had always been good. But I had spent most of my career accepting less than I should have because gratitude had become my default setting. Grateful for the opportunity, grateful to be considered, grateful not to be too much. That mindset had followed me longer than I realized. Not just in family, everywhere. So when the offer came in, reasonable and polished and lower than what I was worth, I didn't accept it. I negotiated. They countered. I countered again. And while I was sitting there drafting that email, I had this strange, almost disorienting realization. I was allowed to ask for more. Not because I was desperate, not because I needed permission, because I had earned it. They met my number. I started in September. The new apartment was nicer than anywhere I had lived before. Not luxurious, just intentional. Clean lines, big windows, a gym in the building, a kitchen that belonged entirely to me. No guest room set aside for family emergencies. No spare key floating around for people who just needed a few weeks. Everything in that place had one purpose: to serve the life I was building. I started going to the gym at 6 every morning. Not because I was trying to become someone else, because routine became sacred to me. I wanted a life that felt like mine down to the hour. Coffee, workout, commute, meetings, dinner, reading, sleep. No chaos I didn't choose. No emotional debt hidden inside ordinary days. And the work paid off. The first year, I made an impact fast. The second year, I had more responsibility and a team under me. By the third year, my compensation package would have made the version of me sitting in that old kitchen stare in disbelief. I learned how money worked when it wasn't constantly being siphoned into other people's emergencies. I invested. I saved differently. I stopped funding guilt and started funding peace. That may sound cold to some people. It isn't. It's just what happens when you finally stop confusing self-sacrifice with virtue. I met Adrian Cole in my third year away, at a logistics and supply chain conference of all places. He was a consultant, sharp, observant, calm in a way that felt earned rather than rehearsed. He did not try to impress me. That stood out immediately. Most people at those events either perform competence too hard or charm too fast. Adrian didn't do either. He asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. Not networking listened. Real listened. We ended up talking for 3 hours over a dinner neither of us had planned to stay that long for. I drove home that night thinking about how long it had been since a conversation made me feel like a person instead of a function. That was new, or maybe not new. Maybe just forgotten. We dated slowly, intentionally. There was no rush in it, and that mattered. I had no interest in confusing intensity for safety ever again. On our 5th date, I told him the whole story. Not the polished version. Not the short one. The real one. The doorway. The bed. The 2 messages, the 11 calls, the exact moment I understood what my pain was worth inside my own family. He listened without interrupting. No flinching, no performative outrage, no immediate attempt to reassure me out of my own experience. When I finished, there was a silence. Not awkward, respectful. Then he asked me a question no one else had asked. He said, "What do you need from someone who loves you that you didn't get from them?" I stared at him, because the truth was I knew. By then, I knew exactly what the answer was. I needed honesty without pressure, loyalty without spectators, consistency without reminders, protection that didn't disappear when it became inconvenient, love that did not depend on how useful I was, And for the first time in a very long time, I said all of that out loud. Completely. Specifically, without softening any part of it to make myself easier to love. Adrian didn't promise the moon. He didn't make grand speeches. He just listened. And then, over time, he met every item on that list. Quietly, consistently, without being asked twice. That matters more than people think. Grand gestures are easy. Consistency is rare. We got engaged last spring. The ring was chosen with care. The proposal happened on a Tuesday night in our apartment with no audience, no hidden photographer, no family group chat waiting for pictures. Just us. And I remember looking at him afterward and realizing that the absence of spectacle did not make it smaller. It made it real. I didn't need witnesses anymore for the things that mattered most. I had spent too many years performing stability for people who never cared what it cost me. I was done performing. I was building something actual now. Something private, something chosen, something strong enough to hold. And for a while, it felt like the past had finally receded far enough to stay there. But that isn't how old lives work. They don't always vanish. Sometimes they return in fragments. A message passed through someone else. A forwarded letter. A name you haven't said in years landing in your inbox, like it still belongs there. That part came later. Not all at once. In pieces. The way water finds cracks you didn't know were still open. It didn't happen all at once. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Something you could brace for. Instead, they came back in fragments. The first time, it wasn't even direct. My mother reached out through Troy. A message passed along like something fragile. She just wants to know if you're okay. Troy told me over the phone. Then he paused and said, "You don't have to respond." I didn't. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I had already understood something she still hadn't. Wanting access to me is not the same as taking responsibility for what happened. A few months later, she sent a letter. Handwritten. Troy forwarded it. I remember holding it in my hands for a long time before opening it. Not nervous. Just aware of what it would probably say. I was right. She said she missed me. She said she loved me. She said she hoped I had found peace. She did not say, Danielle was wrong. She did not say, I failed you. She did not say, I chose comfort over your pain, and I have lived with that decision every day since. She said she missed me, and I want you to understand something. That sentence, I miss you, can sometimes be a way of asking you to solve a problem that someone else created. Because if I responded, if I reopened the door, then everything would start moving back toward normal. And normal was the problem. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and left it there. Danielle tried next. She found my work email through someone who still had connections to both of us. The message was long, carefully written. She said she had changed, that she thought about what she did all the time, that it haunted her, that she wished she could take it back. And maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. But the truth was, it didn't matter. Because what she was asking for was something I no longer offered. She wasn't asking to understand. She wasn't asking to repair. She was asking me to make it okay, to absorb it. One more time, and I was done doing that. So I didn't respond. Marcus reached out once too, about 2 years after everything. A message through social media. Shorter, less polished. He said he had done a lot of work on himself, that he was sorry for the pain he caused, that he hoped I was doing well. I read it, sat with it, and I did something that would have surprised the version of me from 5 years earlier. I accepted the apology. Not out loud. Not to him. Internally, because carrying anger is expensive. And I had stopped paying for things that didn't benefit me. But acceptance does not require access. So I didn't reply. The harder ones were the cousins. The ones who had stayed neutral. The ones who didn't take a side, but also didn't stand up. One of them reached out about a year ago. She said the family talked about me all the time. That my mother kept a photo of me on the mantle. That at the last reunion, people kept asking where I was. She said Danielle had been struggling. That things hadn't gone well for her. That the charm wasn't working the way it used to. And then she asked, with genuine confusion, why are you still keeping your distance? It's been so long. I read that message 4 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I wanted to answer it honestly. Not politely, not defensively. Honestly, I wrote the response, deleted it, rewrote it 4 times. And then I sent this. Time passing isn't the same as things being resolved. That week, I had 11 conversations with people who were supposed to love me. 8 of them found a way to make what happened smaller so it would be easier to live with. That told me everything I needed to know about what my pain was worth in that space. I've built a life I'm proud of. I intend to protect it. I wish all of you well. I mean that. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. People who ask why you're still gone rarely want the real answer. They want the version that lets them feel better about the fact that you left. Here's what I learned. Building a good life after something like that doesn't feel like revenge. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel cinematic. It feels ordinary. It feels like waking up on a Tuesday and realizing nothing in your day belongs to anyone else. It feels like going to the gym when you don't want to, because discipline became your form of self-respect. It feels like sitting in therapy and unlearning everything you thought love required you to tolerate. It feels like negotiating your salary, instead of accepting less just to be seen as agreeable. It feels like choosing a man who asks you real questions, and then actually listens to the answers. It feels like standing in an apartment that is entirely yours, and understanding for the first time that peace can be something you create, not something you earn by enduring. But I will tell you what came closest to something like justice. About 8 months ago, my mother called Troy again. She told him Danielle had been struggling, that relationships hadn't lasted, that opportunities hadn't worked out, that the things she used to rely on weren't opening doors anymore. She said Danielle talked about me like a wound that wouldn't close. She said at family gatherings, sometimes someone would mention something I used to do, and the room would go quiet. She said my absence had a shape, that they could feel exactly what was no longer there. Troy told me all of that. Then he asked one question. You good? And I thought about it. Not quickly. Not automatically. Honestly. And I said, yeah, I'm good. Not because Danielle was struggling. I didn't build my life so I could enjoy someone else falling apart. I don't want her to suffer. I mean that. But I also don't carry responsibility for the consequences of choices she made. Clearly. Freely. Her life is the result of her decisions, the same way mine is the result of mine. And mine is good. Not perfect. Not easy, but real. Adrian and I are getting married in October. Small ceremony. People we chose, not people we were assigned. Troy will be there, standing beside me, exactly where he's been through all of this. Dr. Ellison knows the date. I still see her quarterly, because maintenance is not weakness. We've been looking at houses, a neighborhood that's growing, something we can build into over time. A foundation. We understand. My family won't be there. Not because I made a statement. Not because I wrote a declaration. Because an invitation requires a relationship. And a relationship requires a foundation. I saw that foundation clearly on a Saturday night in April. And I confirmed it across 11 conversations the week after. I know what it's made of. I know what it can hold. And I know what it drops. I'm not building my life on top of it. I don't hate them. That part surprised me. Anger burns out. It always does. What replaced it is quieter, more permanent. Clarity. I know what that circle cost me. I know what it gave back. I ran the numbers, and the return wasn't there. So I closed that account, and I opened better ones. They compound. Every year, if you're somewhere right now, carrying something your own family handed you, and then asked you to carry quietly so everyone else could stay comfortable, I need you to hear this. The peace they're asking you to protect is not yours. It's theirs. It exists so they don't have to sit with what they allowed. You don't have to carry that. You can put it down, and you can build something so solid, so entirely yours, that the only way they ever see it is from a distance they created themselves and will never be invited to cross. They showed me what I was worth to them. I spent 5 years showing myself what I was worth to me. Those are two very different numbers.